Okay, so welcome. It's great to have you guys here. We are starting our Thursday, or kind of we started up a Wellness Wednesday, and we've kind of moved it to Thursdays here for the next little while, and kind of restarting these. It's going to be a little bit before we get back together in person again, so we might as well just connect however we can. So this month, our focus is kind of on aromatherapy and like what it does it all do. And it seems a little hokey, right? When I first heard about it, it's like, the diffusers are nice, but they don't really do anything. I'm going to take it internally, I'm going to rub it on my body, and that's where I'm going to feel it. And it was kind of a surprise to me actually to feel or to feel this and to realize the huge benefit that aromatherapy does actually have for us. And many people come to essential oils, and this is their only pathway of how they would only ever use oils, and that's great too. So there's lots of great synergies that we'll talk about the different ways that we can use oils to support, and in particular for stress, because stress is kind of the other pandemic that we have going on in our world. It started before our virus pandemic, but is still it's being amplified, the effects of it being amplified by what's going on in the world today. So super important for us to understand it as best we can. And so when you inhale, and we're going to talk about this, um, actually, we'll leave that. Let's just go on let's look at, what is stress? And I tried to find a definition for what stress is. And all I really could get was when you experience changes or challenges, stressors, your body produces physical and mental responses. Okay, but it doesn't really say what. So what is that physical and mental response? I want to go deeper, right? I'm that person who needs to know the why and what are they really talking about? But we'll stop there for a moment and just, check in. How often do you feel stressed in your daily life, right? Is it, all day, every day? Is it, at certain points, at certain peak points in your day? And then it's all kind of also relates to sleep. It also relates to how we eat, right? And in our digestive system. So kind of just check into that little kind of meter and how that all works within your daily life. And let's dive deeper into what is really happening, what really is stress, right? And so when you have this stressor coming in your life, and we have good stress, we have bad stress, right? Sometimes stress is super helpful for us. But when you feel the stress, when you have something come in or alerting your new system, the first thing that actually kicks in is your sympathetic nervous system. And we always talk about this in yoga, how the sympathetic is like a flip of a switch. It is right there. It's flooding your system. The parasympathetic, the calming down system, takes a little while to kick in. So you have this instant action one, which is good because when you need to run from a tiger, you need to run fast, right? You can't wait for it to kick in. But it is that fast kick in. And after about 10 seconds, so when that first, sympathetic system comes in, it's actually flooding our body with a couple of chemicals. Let me just grab the names of them here. And it is epinephrine and norepinephrine. Those are the two that so we're going to see those again later. So I wanted to highlight them. So those are the two that get flooded immediately on that first 10-second blitz. And then this HPA axis comes into play. And this is the hypothalamus, the pituitary gland, and the adrenal glands. And being an engineer, when it says axis, I like to see it in a straight line. It probably isn't, but it is the hypothalamus is kind of within your head here. We're going to see a better picture of it in a moment. The pituitary is right like in behind your ear in the center there. And then the adrenals are actually way down just by your kidneys, like way down in your abdominal section. And then you can actually add in the digestive system. It's not part of that HPA axis, but it ends up having a lot to do with it and ends up being, triggering into the functionality of how all of this works, okay? So when the HPA axis is stimulated, then it's going to release some chemicals. And then you've probably heard the term, or you might have heard the term of CRH or CRF. And this is when it first kicks in, the hypothalamus is responding and it's releasing corticotropin, releasing hormone or corticotropin releasing factor. And that's going to, kicks into the pituitary, that it latches onto these receptors on the outside of the pituitary. And it tells the pituitary to create a substance called adrenocorticotropic hormone. So ACTH. And then that sends it down to from the pituitary, it goes down to the adrenals. The adrenals pick up this ATH, and then they start to produce cortisol. Okay, cortisol floods our body. That's what's going to, send that, extra response to your big muscle groups, right? So you have that fight or flight response. It is going to increase your blood pressure and your cardiac output so that your heart is going to be able to, handle what you need to, like when you're running away from that tiger. And then the big skeletal muscles come into play. It gets more glucose into your blood as well, so it impacts our sugar streams that are coming in. And glucose is that crucial energy for our cells, right? So whatever we're going to need in the moment, it's going to have what it needs to have to go there. Sorry, I got my own stress response going on here. My dog is taking off. Okay, somebody walks by the door. Anyways, the joys of this. Okay, and then this cortisol actually inhibits other functionalities of our body, and that's where it comes in key as well. It inhibits our reproductive system, it inhibits our digestive system, it inhibits our long-term immunity, and this is where we start to see when we have too much stress building up within our body, all of these, byproducts and long-term reactions to this. And so when we look at this in terms of a Ayurveda perspective, that initial kick in of the hormones might be like a stage 1, right? You're holding a little bit too long, or your body gets triggered and doesn't release. And you're living at those heightened levels of stress for a long period of time. That's going to cause us to go from this stage 1 disease into the stage 4, 5, and 6, where we start to get long-term results from what's happening within this. Okay, so let's move on from this one. So what happens with smells? Like, what does that do? So when you smell something in, and I've heard this likened to, this is kind of where the light bulb went on for me. It's if you go in for surgery, they put the little mask over your nose and you breathe something in. You're breathing a bunch of chemicals in, and all of a sudden your system goes to sleep, right? And sometimes it's a mask, and sometimes it's actually they're injecting into your bloodstream. Same thing we do with our oils, right? So same thing when you breathe in your oils, you have chemicals, chemical compounds going in. These are natural versus the synthetics, but it's going to go in, and it has the potential to affect all of these different systems in your body, just as that mask on and what you breathe in the hospital for surgery would do. Not to the same extent, right? They're not designed to do the same thing, but it has that, potential, or that access point. It's the same delivery system that we're looking at, right? So when it comes into the bodies, then it's connecting right to that olfactory nerve, and you can see that in this picture. The olfactory nerve comes right in past the nasal passages. There's actually like a little bulb right in here too, that it connects with in our nervous system, and it all connects to that limbic system of the brain. Okay. And plus too, when you breathe it in, you've got these teeny tiny, so essential oils are super, super small molecules. And so they are able to get absorbed in really quickly into the bloodstream. And some of them, not all of them, but some of them actually cross the blood-brain barrier. And so this is where we get a huge effect with some of our oils in that realm as well. Okay, oops. So this is just another, if we go back one here into this like orangey blob, let's go and make it a little bit, more, linked into what is in there. So this is the limbic system basically of the brain, and this is where your memories are stored. This is where your emotions are stored. This is the fight, flight, or freeze system of your body. So anytime that you're noticing that you're not acting the way you want, or being the person you thought you were going to be when you woke up in the morning, or you find yourself getting triggered a lot, that's probably what's going on. Is there's something happening in this limbic system of your brain. And so when you smell an essential oil, you can get these natural chemicals and molecules to help your behavior align with who you want to be. So you can actually do a little test on this. If you have a wild orange or have something there, just as I'm talking, you put a drop of that in your hand and breathe it in. I did that just before we got started to kind of give myself that calm down, but feel free to do that and experiment as we go along. So these essential oil molecules, let me just see if I want to go to this one or this next one here. This is just this is just kind of highlighting the different, where this all is in relation to the full brain, right? And you have the hippocampus, you have the hypothalamus, that's when we're talking about that HPA axis, right? You have the amygdala, which is where our emotions are. Hypothalamus regulates the body functions. That's where we're talking about raising the heart rate and the blood pumping through our system. Right, we have our cerebral cortex or corpus callosum. This is our thinking part of the brain. And then you have the basal ganglia, which is your movement reward, and the thalamus, which is your sensory gateway. So that's, again, connected to where our sense of smell is going to come into all of this great big picture. So um, what happens when we do this? And so let's go to this one next. The corpus callosum is, and I love the Dan Siegel image of this. So this is your thinking part of the brain. This one that we had back in this last one here. This is represented by your thumb, okay? And then wrapped around this is your corpus callosum. It looks like kind of like all your fingers going around that. And so Dan Siegel calls it flipping your lid, but nothing actually physically moves within your brain when you do this. What happens is you're no longer connecting, and so the synapses aren't connecting between the limbic system and the thinking brain, right? So it actually, with the messenger molecules aren't happening between there. And let's give a picture of that. So imagine you have these different, synapses. This is kind of like a nerve synapse. And what happens when we get stressed is you get this flood of chemicals. So basically stress, if we go back to that HPA axis, what's happening in all of that is a chemical reaction. It's just this chemical string, right? You get stressed, it releases norepinephrine and dopamine into your system, right? And norepinephrine, there's another one in there. Again, the long words are challenging for me, especially this late at night. So you get these chemicals released in your brain, and then your HPA axis clicks in, releasing more chemicals, so flooding your system with chemicals. And so when it does this, it impedes so that these neurons can't actually talk to each other, right? So it's kind of like this film that gets put in there, or it's like you're spinning on this big, imagine like the sea is kind of washing through, and everything that was talking to each other is no longer talking to each other, right? It just doesn't have that capability of being able to do that. So when we look at regulating our emotion, a lot of our pharmaceutical aids that we're able to use for this, that's what they're doing. They're either blocking inhibitors that are talking too much to each other, or they're increasing that communication ability. And this is the same thing what our essential oils can do. And this is the beauty of having so many different essential oils at our disposal, because different receptors need different keys. Like you can see that some of them here might need like an octagonal key, some of them might be like a triangle key, and there's different ways that they're going to react and different things that are going to fit in different receptors to do different jobs. And so this is the whole pharmaceutical, not the whole industry, but a lot of what the industry is trying to figure out what it is that can do that. And this is the same with our essential oil business or industry, is that we're trying to figure out what works, and what works for one might not work for another. Just the same thing as when you're trying a medication out, your doctor will get you to try one. It might not work the same way as it's going to work for somebody else. And so this is where we get that play, and this is where your individual nature comes into the forefront on this. So I want you to kind of have this picture in your mind. So these neurotransmitter transporters are essentially like the hormones that are flooding through the system, giving too much or blocking or inhibiting. So sometimes when those hormones transit through the system, when you get a flood of one set of hormones, it means another set of hormones is being turned off, right? And so one of those factors was when, and going back to that picture with the gut there, when our stress hormones come in, our gut is turned off, right? So we're no longer processing food. And that is where a lot of our mood balancing hormones are created, is in the gut. And so that immediately drops their output, and we're not seeing that within the body. Okay, let's move on to this guy here. Let's talk about some of the specifics. So there are four basic types of stress. Basically, there's four basic types of chemicals reactions that are their impact our stress load, our ability to react or not react, and our happiness, and all those kind of things that we can deem our stress factors. So one of them is serotonin, and serotonin is known as like the happiness chemical. A lot of it is produced in the gut, and it's just kind of for fun factor of giving you kind of some of the chemical, like what does the molecule actually look like? And then we have fun when we look at the actual essential oil molecules too, and you can kind of see how that kind of all works together. Beyond my capability, we won't go there. But these are basically the four main neurotransmitters of the brain, right? So looking back at this little diagram here, we have a neurotransmitter, going on within there, and then the transporters and that type of thing. This, when we come to GABA, when we talk about him, this is going to be like directly related to this. Okay, so our brain and body is getting flooded with chemicals and hormones. It starts this chain reaction through the body of, too many of some chemicals and too not enough of others, right? So serotonin is our sadness, our happiness button, essentially. GABA is our communicator receptors, right? So think of it as the communication, the big communication. Think of it also as the brakes on the car. So when we are low in GABA, we don't have the brakes to put on, we can't put a stop on our reactions. We just kind of start going at high speed all the time and we can't like slow down within that. We're going to go more into that in a moment. Catecholamines are the stress hormones. So when you're like needing to run away from that tiger, that's what kind of comes in and it gets flooded through the system. And sometimes it gets stuck in the on switch, right? And exhausting, imagine how exhausting it would be if you're stuck in the on switch all of the time. And for those that have experienced, some severe trauma within their life, that might be with the situation that they're dealing with, right? Um, in terms of they're thinking of little kids and their family home life, what they're coming to school with is, and when you're in that state, your corpus callosum isn't working, your higher functioning thinking isn't working, and all of that. It's just you're in that total reactive state. Your body is not able to calm down. And then dopamine, or not dopamine, the endorphins is our reward seeking center of the brain, right? So this constant need to numb out or finding the next pleasure hit. You could be on either end of that spectrum. Or taking, that risky behavior that we're following on that high wire as you're going across. Okay, let's going to dive into each one of these. But before we do that, I just want to mention that we're going to talk a lot about some essential oils. That's kind of our focus on our thing. But number one support for stress is actually drinking water. So if you have your water handy, go ahead and drink some of that right now. I'm going to do that as well, because the body is 75% water, but our brain is actually 85% water. And so without the brain, without water, water kind of provides, there's this like hormone, chemistry reaction, but there's also an electrical current reaction that's happening. And water is our conductor to help all of that function, right? And so without water, it severely impacts this neurotransmitter functionality. So, and I've, seen this in purpose on myself. I've seen like when I don't get enough water in my body, I was also able to watch this, watch stress and severe anxiety syndrome take place in my daughter when we were doing a Camino walk a couple years ago now. And the days that she drank water or didn't drink water or didn't get the right nutrients in her, huge impact on what we're able to do. And so when we're talking about some of these essential oils, if we don't have some of these fundamentals within the system, they're simply band-aids, and they're band-aids that won't work. So you need to have these fundamentals, water being one and proper nutrition being the other one. And the cries for thirst actually look like a lot of these, common things that we have going on in our body. Some of them we attribute to too much stress. Others we can attribute to other factors within our life. But the effects of not having enough water are huge, right? So start with that one. And then some of our nutritional supplemental supports that is the other baseline, the foundation for this, is your omega-3s. In fact, a lot of doctors prescribe omega-3 now for brain injuries, and just and mood related disorders. Vitamin D is a huge one that we need to get in our system. Magnesium, rhodiola rosacea is like an adaptogen, so it helps our body kind of adapt to different situations. It's one of those ones like that can be super helpful. And then our pre and probiotics, just basically helping us get the nutrients out of our body. And then you could add like the amino acids and our enzymes into that one as well, onto that list. Okay, so let's dive into each one of these different types of stress. And I want you to just kind of look and think of it as a little checklist as to what best describes me, what's going on in my body, or perhaps you've got someone in your life that kind of you can kind of make the check marks for them, and then you can notice how, as we go through these four different types, whether what the people in your life are dealing with and what you're dealing with, they might be totally different things, and they might need some different solutions. Okay, so if you're just feeling down, right, melancholy, lots of negativity, just those negative thoughts kind of going on in your body, just depressed. We often call it the winter blues, or seasonal affective disorder, just a lot of worry and anxiety, that kind of constant level within that. Low self-esteem, feeling like guilty, just feeling that kind of that complex, kind of guilt complex going on. This can lead into some obsessive thoughts, behaviors, and perfectionist tendencies can fall into this one as well. But it can also be, so it's not just like this feeling of low, but it can be like rage and PMS, and that anger response can come into this one. Panic attacks, suicidal thoughts definitely come into here. Afternoon and evening food cravings can be a sign of low serotonin. Not liking hot weather can be a sign of that. Fibromyalgia symptoms, TMJ pain, some of these we saw on the water list too, right? Not able to fall asleep. Again, it's quite often attributed to serotonin levels and disturbed sleep coming in that. And so what we're looking to get is this positive outlook, emotional stability, some self-confidence, and this emotional flexibility or resilience coming within our system. And so ways that we do that, just before I flip onto that, let me just actually check my notes instead of just going totally from memory on this. So serotonin is primarily actually found in the GI tract, right? So it's found in your gut. So gut, and then your platelets, your blood platelets, and your central nervous system, the three places that it lives. And it's thought to be that contributor to well-being and happiness. Again, this is where kind of science comes into art, and it's not totally understood on all of these things. Protein insufficiencies can be a cause of this. Imbalanced ratio of those amino acids in your diet, B6 deficient, B6 vitamin, all of the Bs, but particularly B6 can be a deficiency of factor in this one. And childhood abuse is a predisposition to developing serotonin abnormalities, and linking to depression and severe anxiety disorder into adulthood. Candida is a factor for serotonin levels. So when we look at some of our oils, some of our candida oils kind of come into this, because candida destroys serotonin in the gut, right? And then low thyroid levels can also indicate this kind of function of this fungus within the body. Okay, so some of our solutions, and I'm looking at just our smelling solutions today in terms of our oils. We do have a whole list of foods like that we do go into more details with the Daily Essentials group. This is like a whole unit where we dive in really deep. But for today, we're just looking at the stress and the smells and what's going to impact us there primarily. So when we're looking at the antidepressant nature of what serotonin levels can do, low serotonin can do, the big ones for that are citrus oils. So anything citrus basically is going to be like a happiness factor for you, and the mints. Other ones that come into play on this is geranium, litsea, and ylang ylang are big players for serotonin, and melissa. And then we look at the anxiety, the phobias, the insomnia, the anger. Some of that is more the grounding and the soothing oils come into this one as well. And trying to think if I've got, no, that's coming on the next one. Okay, so that's kind of some of our ones we're going to go into, and we're going to, look at some of the more specific oils. So if you look at the blends on the picture here, we have the emotional blend series. So our Motivate is our citrus. Console can be some of those grounding. Cheer is another citrus one. Again, hugely supportive. Just think sunshine in a bottle, right? Those kind of things coming in is going to be your serotonin supporters on this. Okay. Oh, and this actually, there's a research study I looked at, and looking at research like for serotonin levels and looking at linking essential oils and different essential oils with actual measured serotonin levels within the body. And lemon oil was the one that came out on top. So we often think like lavender is like the cure-all for mood and that type of thing, but lemon actually was the one that came out on top for having the biggest connection factor to serotonin. And it's such a simple oil, one that we often have around. We use it for our cleaning. We're going to do some spring cleaning stuff here soon. We use it sometimes we use it for our morning water. We have other options on that, but basically our citrus waters that we do. But just, diffusing lemon can be a really easy way, especially if the people in your home don't like you diffusing. Lemon is one that flies under the radar and nobody really picks it up. They just think the house smells clean, right? Or that it just smells fresh in here. They don't relate it. They don't tend to get reactions or anything like that. So it's a great one to tap into for that. Okay, moving on to GABA. So some of the signs of low GABA within the body are, stiff, tense muscles, right? And so this is the one that not being able to put the brakes on, not being able to calm down on the symptoms within your body. You can see how that would, lead into some, stiffness within the body. Just this general feeling of being overstretched and overwhelmed. unable to relax, mental chatter, not able to turn that off, those voices in your head, being overreactive, like hyper reactive to things, having that high anxiety level. Just kind of think of it like you've had way too much coffee. And that's probably what, there's probably a relationship in terms of what's going on there. Just, yeah, uptight, high strung, and then drawn to substance abuse. So looking for something to turn this down, right, is kind of coming into that play. So oils that are going to help are going to be your high linalool oils coming into play. And again, we look at this, we think lavender, like lavender is going to be our calming, soothing oil. If you actually look at the list of oils and the percentage of linalool in there, lavender is about, halfway down, if not more, on the page. And so some of the ones that come in before are whole wood, which is in our balance oil, palmarosa, cilantro. Like who knew cilantro was calming for has a high linalool content in it, calming within the body. Geranium, and then lavender comes down on that list. There's a whole bunch of other ones that are in between them, but those are the top ones that are the most common oils in that realm. Focus oils are another one because it relates to being able to have these transmitters talk to each other more. Right, so this is where our adaptive comes in. Adaptive has citrus in it. It has that lavender in it coming into place, and then a whole bunch of other things kind of mixed in there. You'll see like adaptive kind of does everything kind of across the board. Balance is great as a focus blend and in tune, and then our calming and our soothing oils come into place on this. So we want calming, we want relaxing, and we want to have this resilience or able to react just better with calm down those reactions within our body. Okay, the next one we had on our list there is our endorphins. No, we're missing one. Catecholamines. Sorry, flipped over too fast. Like there's 4 somewhere. Somewhere we're missing one. Okay, so catecholamines in the body. And so these are released during your stress response and not going back to normal. So these initial ones that got released, the adrenaline, the dopamine, and the norepinephrine. Remember those initial ones that get released, and then they get boosted again when that HPA axis kicks in. So when we have these catecholamines and you're in this fight or flight and you're not able to, so this is kind of 2 different kinds of shut off. GABA is like you get these connectors that are firing, and GABA also comes into play with some of the ADHD and that type of thing, as well as the catecholamines kind of coming into those reactions within the body. So just not being able to turn off some of these big stress responses within the body is kind of what we're talking about. And so some of the foods that come into place on this one, I'll just give you a little tidbit, is full spectrum amino acids. This is where your meat, your eggs, your poultry, and your seafood and your dairy, all of that come into really a big, percentage of this. Again, this is one of the ones I saw with my daughter on our little infamous walk through Spain there in that one. And so other things that come into this one is just like this lack of energy. So if you're always on fight or flight, you have no energy to give anymore. Like you can't kick it in another notch because you've been at that notch for so long. It's just your adrenal system is completely depleted from being in there. It can also lead to like heart palpitations, all of these symptoms of everything kind of being in overdrive, anxiety, shaking. This also leads to thyroid imbalance because of the adrenal system and this imbalance in the chemicals. Constipation, remember that it's turning off our digestive system, and so it's not going to work. So that's going to happen in our abdominal system. Nothing is going to work well within that. Okay, and eventually this does lead to apathy and depression because it's just you're just not able to get going with life, right? And that ends up leading into these stages of depression as well. So what we want to do with this is soothe our system, right? You want to be able to calm down and soothe the body, looking at those sedative oils have sedative properties. We want to look at changing patterns, right? And so we often talk about this on an emotional level of changing patterns, but our tree oils, especially our Douglas fir, Siberian fir, and black spruce, really help to do that as well, right? And then our adrenal support, so basil is a huge one, geranium is another great one for that. Then our memory and our brain oils, so frankincense, our rosemary, basil comes in again on that one, our peppermint, all of those ones that are going to help with our, get our memories going into play. Okay. Lemongrass is another one that comes into play on that one. And lemon is huge for our brain and memory. Okay, and then we pop into our endorphins. So this is where you are, seeking that high or needing that constant rush, or just kind of living at the edge again. So very sensitive to emotional type responses, craving comfort foods. So a lot of these comfort foods provide some of these endorphins for us. This is where caffeine comes into place because you are like craving this addiction. But it's depleting. So these sources of this high are depleting to the system in the long run. So any of the sugars, any of the like the comfort foods like our breads and all that type of stuff, our sugary foods, our donuts, that's all going to cause a crash later on. So it's not like a permanent fix. It's not going to solve it. So you have this moodiness where you're up and down, this kind of thrill seeking and impulse behavior. This is where addiction or exercise addictions can come into play because this is what you're feeding your body with endorphins. So this is a great way to, fix the problem, but going too much, anything in too much isn't healthy for us, right? Kind of goes over that edge. This is where we come into some of our gambling addictions, our sex addictions, and that type of thing comes into play with the different, endorphin chemicals that are out of balance within the system. So oils that help to balance this is going to be our happiness oils. And in that we have any of our citrus, this ylang ylang melissa grouping, any of our mints. So think motivate, super good for this one. And then our coping with pain, right? So when we quite often we look at this exercise relationship and our pain. So this is basically the opioids that come into this in terms of the chemistry of what's happening. The opioids are the one that come into play on this, and so it's addicting to that system. So we have natural opioids that can come in within our body, and then we can have the synthetic, and then we can get the same type of reaction on an opioid reaction, but activating on these same pain receptors with our birch oil. It's the number one. Birch is one that we actually can't buy. And so whenever you see that one come out, you snap it up really quickly because it's super good for dealing with pain and then also some of this endorphin stuff. Wintergreen, which is in our deep blue, and helichrysum is one of those ones that kind of heal emotional trauma and kind of coming into this releasing of the pain, releasing of the trauma for this type of stress. Okay, so part of what got me really curious about all of this is we have a new little kit within doTERRA called the Aroma Essentials kit. And it's going to be, I think, one of my new favorites, especially for anything stress and mood related, and also for yoga teachers getting started with teaching yoga with the oils, because these are like great oils, just wonderful oils to be using in a yoga class. Some of them, too, the oils there on the Northern Escape and the Citrus Bloom, we can't buy. They only come in this kit. This kit right now in Canada is only an enrollment kit. So if you are looking to get started, this is one that helps you with that. You can buy it as a loyalty, like an enrollment collection on the US side. You can buy it, like if you're already a member, you can get it through that way. Likely you already have most of these oils, so you only need to like add in a couple into your collection. But for those of you who are getting started, that's a good way to get started with this one. I'm going to go a little bit deeper into this. And it comes with a little diffuser, right? How perfect to get started with this. So I got a little curious and kind of started to look through at what the ingredients were in some of these blends and what they're good for, and then started to relate them to, okay, what's ones are going to tick off the boxes for the different types of stress. So if there's one type of stress that you noticed, this is going to give you some of those really fun solutions for that within the blends. The blends are nice because they are formulated with a bunch of different things already put together, so they tend to work really well. Sometimes our singles are really nice, but the blends have this like more complicated chemistry that works on many different levels. This is going to connect to a lot of different receptor sites within your body. So adaptive kind of goes right across the top in terms of everything that it's dealing with. Our balance is going to be, it's kind of that, resetting or that grounding element that we need, especially for the GABA and the catecholamines going over there, but sometimes as well for that serotonin levels coming into place. Citrus Bloom, we have that happiness in a bottle, and mixed with some florals and that type of aspect. So the florals is that comforting nature, so it kind of goes right across the board as well. Cheer, again, is that citrus, it's that happiness thing, so it's going quite a ways across the border. Easy air, so when we look at some of the focus oils, like there isn't a real so balance is another one would constitute a focus oil because of the different ingredients it has in there, with the whole wood and the frankincense, that type of thing in balance. And black spruce is in that one, another good one for that. But easy air is another one that gives us some of those brain kind of chemicals. So it's got the rosemary in there, which is another one of our brain ones. And so it's good. It's really good for that aspect of dealing with this. On guard is one that comes into play in any of the ones that have a candida reaction because clove is the number one oil for candida. And then there's the cinnamon and all that are good for fighting that immune response within the body. And so On Guard comes into play on those two aspects in terms of mental health. It's also just warming and soothing and can play that. It's also going to be boosting your immune system, which gets depleted when your stress system is in full force. And then we have our peppermint, which is going to be that energy booster, right? So any of those ones that are kind of depleting in nature, it's going to give you that energy kick. And even in terms of the endorphin rush that we need, peppermint can be that endorphin rush sometimes that we can tap into. Serenity comes just about across the board in this one in terms of that calming, soothing factor that it's going to give us. It also helps our sleep, and is when we sleep that that our body produces a lot of these mood hormones as well. And then wild orange tends to be another great one. I probably could have put it all across the board and everything in this one too, in terms of its ability just to like regulate mood really easily and really simply. Oops, going backwards. So just a fun little look at some of those blends that come into that. This is the original mood system with doTERRA. So I'm just going to give you some solutions. I kind of talked in generalities before. This is kind of some specific ones. These four original blends were composed to be the mood system, and they still work amazingly well. Elevations, when we haven't tapped into, it is one of the top ones there for lifting mood. So another one, that serotonin one is the elevation blend. Getting through some stuff. It's got Melissa in it, which is that top one, and then some of the citrus and a bunch of really good stuff in that one. Citrus Bliss is a citrus, and I think there's peppermint in that one as well. But that's a really, really yummy one. It's got citruses and it's got some kind of warming, nurturing tones to it. I love this one at night when you try to turn off those voices in your head, but can work any time of day. Serenity we talked about, and balance we talked about in terms of that. And then this is our other, the next version. So the mood oils #2 version kind of coming into play, where they played with some of the ingredients and looking at, okay, let's mix citrus and mints together, or citrus and spices, and what can we come up with of that. And they don't stick like totally to that within the bottle. I was looking at one of them there that had, oh, maybe they actually do. Yeah, these ones actually do. I'm kind of like thinking of the ingredient list on some of them. There's a few little outliers that they've kind of rounded out the blends with, so there might not be exactly only citrus and mints as it kind of comes into that, but really that's where the predominant is. And so this helps us to get this. I love this wheel that you can look at anything within your cabinet and it's like, okay, I'm feeling, really bitter right now or really discontent. What do I need? I'm going to go to my herbs and grasses. So maybe some lemongrass will help me with that, or spikenard or something within that category, right? Or I'm feeling really insecure and anxious. Maybe some spearmint is going to help to kind of like bring that down or something within that category. So really good to have this to kind of self-select, because the best thing for us to do, because we have these solutions that are kind of like most size fits all in terms of the blends, but it's not one size fits all, right? Because you're the only one who knows what's really going to work for you and what you need at the moment. And so it's just kind of trying it out and sensing into what those different ones are within that. Oh, and then the adaptive. Okay, this is version #3. This is, stress and mood is a big factor and one of the biggest things that oils can help us with. So this is just the lowdown of what's in the adaptive oil. It's got wild orange, lavender, copaiba is in there, spearmint, magnolia, rosemary, neroli, and sweet gum. So really top oils for mental health. The adaptive capsule actually has GABA in it, and it has something called selenium root from South Africa. And those are two, again, so it's like an adaptogen. And then we have the actually GABA coming into that. And when you have the GABA with the oils, it is more, it's better absorbed by your system. That's kind of why we put those two of them together. So those are really helpful within that as well. And then the other one that I always want to remind people to tap into is, this isn't, some of these are smell. Actually, these are all, we're going to tap into aromatics of this, and topical function of this one. So the cynthia cells treatments is just created by Boy Truman and his philosophy of getting oils on, right? Just don't overthink it. Just put oils all out along the spine is our central nervous system, right? It's what's connecting to most of the body. So just simply running the oils along the spine on a consistent basis. So trying to do this like every other day, something like that. If there's something that you're going through, it can be a one-off treatment. When I look at it for the inflammatory protocol when I'm in pain, it can work like that. If I look at the infectious disease protocol when I'm, sick, maybe a couple treatments of that, and I'm over whatever I need. This emobic one, so emotional limbic system of the brain, is more tricky to fit. Like it doesn't have like, oh yeah, I'm up and at it, or I'm not feeling physical pain anymore. It's a little trickier to kind of sense into as to whether these are working right. Sometimes we kind of feel immediately, okay, I've shifted my mood. This one can be a little bit more longer lasting to look at. But some of the oils in here, again, even just to look at the oils are really good. The little pictures beside that, basically, it's a really simple system that just tells you what to do. So frankincense, you put it on the neck, right? That's all I'll tell you. Then you smell it and you put it on the feet. And then neroli, you're going to put it up the spine. You're going to smell it. You're going to put it on the feet. Rose is a touch. It typically comes in a touch format. So you're going to put it on your hand, smell it, and then apply it to your the spine, put it on your feet. And so it's really simple, like just kind of follow the pictures as you go through, coming into it. But most of it is just up the spine, smell it, and then put the residue on the feet. And really some amazing results that can happen. And also this tends to be one of my go-tos, is just to look at, okay, what oils does he recommend for this? If I have one or two of them, then those are some oils that I can use in other applications, or maybe put it in a diffuser blend, or something like that as well. He's also very non-structured in his approach. So if you don't have an oil, you substitute something else and he's totally fine. You can like tap into your intuition as to what you need on that one. All right, so that's what I have to share with you on that one. I'm just going to open it up to questions on that. And any last thoughts? I'm going to turn off the recording for our questions. So if you have questions when you're watching the recording, feel free just to connect with me on this, but we will turn off the recording for these and let this be more of a personal nature.